Hi, and thank you for listening to Dream 10X Radio, where we interview people attempting to live extraordinary lives. Our twofold purpose is to both direct and inspire people bold enough to do the same. Dream 10X. Face your fears and make your life count. Hey, it's your boy JC. Welcome to the Dream 10X podcast.
I'm Dr. Capel, his co-host.
And this is episode 55.
Wow!
And in the
What? It's exciting!
We're so enthusiastic.
It's 55 episodes!
55 episodes we've been doing this. All right. This episode, we are going to talk about learning. Again, we've talked about learning in the past. I think it was episode 30 we were just talking about where we looked at the book, The Talent Code, and learned about myelin sheaths in our brain and how deep practice helps solidify those neural pathways in your brain, and you get smarter and better at doing things over your 10,000 hours of practicing. Well, recently I got interested in solving the Rubik's Cube. And I've had one forever, but
it's something you've always wanted to do, right?
I always wanted to do it as a kid. This came out in the 1970s. It was invented by a Hungarian.
Really?
Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
His name was Erno Rubik, and he's still around.
Yeah.
And he was an architectural professor and an entrepreneur. And a puzzle he liked puzzles, and so he created this, and as you know, luck would have it, he was able to find a distributor in the United States, and it just became viral, and now it's sold billions worldwide.
You know how I solved it? I took all the stickers off and put them back on.
And that was a popular way. You could also pop it apart. That was another way that, when we were kids, we would just pop it apart and put it back together. And I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to break it, you know. And so, but I could never figure it out. And I could only get like a maximum of 3 sides.
That's pretty good.
And so I, you know, as a kid, you know, you're like, okay, I can't figure it out, and you just get bored and you move on with other things. But for some reason, this has stuck in my head for a long. A lot of people at work are able to solve them really quickly, and my daughter Claire's boyfriend can do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably why. If he can do it, I gotta do it too. No, I'm just kidding. It's just stuck in my head for a long time, and I thought, you know what? It'd be interesting. It'd be an interesting test, or an interesting test to figure out what it takes to actually learn to solve this, and what can I leverage today in modern times to figure out how to teach myself how to solve this, and then can I sit back and observe myself while I'm learning it to learn from how I'm learning. That's kind of what my approach was in these last couple of weeks.
You just earned your doctorate in learning. That's exactly how we designed it. Yep.
So I wanted to talk about what I learned through my process of learning how to solve the Rubik's Cube. I thought that was kind of interesting because learning is important to me, and it's important to you. And it is important to everybody. It's how we put roofs over our heads. It's how we put food in our mouth, and take care of our family. What we learn and how things we know, the skills that we have, are imperative in being able to command some kind of income to take care of ourselves. And so learning as much as we possibly can is extremely important, in my opinion, to that end. And so that's why I'm interested in especially nowadays, as technology is advancing so much faster, people and machines are learning at a much greater rate, and we really have to work hard to keep pace with the amount of learning that's taking place in the world today.
Totally.
Or not. And the people that are going to fall by the wayside, I mean, I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough moving, especially now moving forward with advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Yeah.
Especially because humans, the natural tendency for humans is to cede control to the machine to help feed us the information and the knowledge that we want, instead of relying on our own mind.
Humans are inherently lazy.
And it's gonna get worse and worse, from maps and GPS to calculators to internet searches. We're ceding more and more of our cognitive power and control to the machines.
Well, at the same time, like, our brains are made to solve complex problems. So remembering like arbitrary facts isn't necessarily a good use of our brains, because if we're like just focusing on, remembering all these dates and times when we learn history, but not learning the context around the history, for example, then that's where the meat is, the context around the history, and how do we not repeat it, versus I know in 1492 Columbus came to the U.S. or South America or whatever. See, I don't even remember the facts. So it's, our brains are made for those larger problem-solving functions.
Right.
Okay,
yes,
off my soapbox.
But still, ceding control to technology is something I think about a lot, and I want to be cognizant of that and careful about how much I do that.
Yeah.
From a personal perspective, just because I want to keep exercising my own brain.
Which is ironic from a software engineer.
Is it? Why?
Yeah, I think so.
Why? Are we stupid?
No, I think that you would want to leverage technology more, given that's like your personal trade and everything.
Oh yeah, so, no, absolutely. I totally want to leverage technology, but at the same time, I want to try to keep my brain sharp and be cognizant of the fact that the tendency is for my human nature to cede control to the machine to feed me what I want in terms of knowledge and information.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And to remember things even. There's a whole, we could talk for hours on this actually.
That's
so
true.
I need to back off of that. But okay, so just want to talk about my top 5 takeaways from observing myself learn how to solve a Rubik's Cube and how I went about going about learning. So number 1 is motivation. You got to be motivated to learn something. And motivation only carries you so far. And once that motivation wanes, you need to have the discipline to keep learning. And so, as I said, I've been trying to solve this Rubik's Cube for years, but the motivation, wanes. It comes and goes, and here it popped up again, and I'm like, well, okay, how can I establish some structure around my learning, some disciplined structure, a plan for how I can go about learning to figure out how to do this. And so that's what I set about doing. And so why was I motivated to do this? I don't really know. It was just something that came to me, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm tired of looking at this on my desk. I love symmetry. I love symmetry. And I hate seeing this scrambled. Every day it was like, I want some freaking order in my life, I want some symmetry. I'm tired of looking at this unscrambled cube and I don't know how to solve it. So that was one of the things. I just put it on my desk. And for years I'm like, that's so annoying. So I finally have it, symmetry and a solution there. So it gives me peace in my soul, sort of. So that's kind of part of the motivation. And then once you have that motivation, establishing a discipline, and the discipline kind of ties in with your plan. So I developed a plan. Secondly, my second point is to develop a plan. And so I had to figure out my plan. So I had to kind of teach myself what my plan was going to be, because I didn't have a teacher like hand me a syllabus and say, here's your learning plan. I had to build that myself. So how did I do that? Well, I knew that I wanted some small bite-sized steps that I could follow, because I didn't want to have to read some big long algorithm for how to solve it and like try to figure it out. I wanted some small steps that I could follow and digest easily on a daily basis. And then I wanted it visual. I wanted somebody to show me how their hands are twisting it to get the various solutions. And so naturally I gravitated to YouTube. What can't you find on YouTube? From fixing your truck to fixing your house to whatever. Everything is out there that you could pretty much. I'm sure there's even how to build a nuclear reactor. I think I've read that online. There's anything that you want to learn, you can find on YouTube. So yeah, I found something that was perfect for me. It was easiestsolve.com. And they break down a set of algorithms. single algorithm or a set of algorithms, 8 algorithms in small bite-sized chunks that you can follow to solve this. And so I would sit down and I'd watch the first step, and then I would practice it. And then I didn't have a schedule. There's no schedule. There's no test. There's no exam. It was relaxed. Every morning I try to get up and read 20 pages of a book that I'm interested in. And so after I'm done reading, I would watch one segment or practice. I'd either watch the video or practice. If I didn't have the previous step, all of the previous steps down, then I wouldn't go on to the next step. And they affirm that in their session, each video. They want you to be able to do all of the previous steps in a certain period of time before you can move on to the next one. And so I really like that. And so it was relaxing for me. I'd sit in my beanbag and I'd drink my coffee and I'd, practice. It was very relaxing. It's kind of meditative. It was kind of a morning meditation. And that was another revelation that was very nice. It's a very relaxing way to start the day. And so that became my habit. That was my plan. That was my daily discipline, is doing that until I could get through the whole thing. Now, as you watched in the video, I still have some notes there's steps 7 and 8. I have not memorized yet. It's counter clock, counter flip clock, and then counter flip for step 7. And when I get to that point, I know when I'm at that point, but I just haven't committed that to memory yet. I'm, I guess, lazy, but I'm hoping that I just get it in my motor memory after practicing it each day. And then the final step is flip, and then you clock 3 times, and then you counter 5 times, and then you clock and counter, and it's solved. And I have not committed those.
You just made it sound so easy.
I have not committed those final 2 steps to memory yet.
You'll get there.
Oh well, yeah. Who cares? I can still solve it. That's really all I care about. Okay, so number 1, have the motivation and the discipline. Number 2, develop a plan, and you can make your own plan. And your plan's got to make you happy, and it's got to be fun. And that's what it was for me. I wanted to be happy and fun and relaxed in doing this, and I think that environment helps facilitate learning. No tests. I'm testing myself because I'm the one who's wanting to learn and grow.
Well, technically, the Rubik's Cube is testing you.
Yeah, this is the test, but there's no multiple.
You must get this done!
and you have to get a certain grade in order to go to the next step. No, forget that. This is real learning, Okay, so the third point was I needed to reach out and find somebody to coach me. I needed to find somebody with the knowledge who could impart that knowledge to me in small digestible chunks that were easy to understand, and that solved my problem for me, and then I could then burn into my neurons. And so my coach was easytosolve.com, and whoever put those videos together did a great job. It was exactly what I needed, and it was fun to watch, and there was humor in it, and it was just a really nice experience. Actually, it's kind of funny. Okay, and number 4, you've heard the phrase practice, practice, practice. I added 10 more practices after that. You just got to keep practicing. It became evident to me. I mean, of course, we already knew this. We already talked about it. But when you're actually going through it, that kinesthetic feeling of doing something with your hands really reinforces what's going on electrically up here. And it's really cool. It's a really cool feeling. That's one of the reasons I love software, is that kinesthetic hand movement. That's also why I love playing the piano. It's also why I love playing the bagpipes, is feeling your hands and fingers doing something in relation to the electrical stuff going on in your brain, and also the rest of your body. So it's really interesting to me how your whole body is involved in learning, not just the electrical gray matter stuff that's going on up here. It's a whole body thing. And in fact, it extends beyond your brain and your body. When you think of distributed cognition, and distributed cognition is the notion that you are actually learning to do things using other people, using your environment, using other tools, like a calculator, for example. computer, our cognition is much broader than just what's going on up here.
Oh yeah.
So it's really fascinating to think about that. And when you're using the Rubik's Cube, speaking of distributed cognition, you're getting constant feedback from this. Are you right or not? Have you screwed up or not? Oh, I'm not at the pattern I should be at this step. Dang it, I got to go back to either the previous step or I got to go all the way back to the beginning. It's constant feedback loop, and it's really fascinating. All right, so practice in order to get something down well and to get those myelin sheaths built around your neurons. We talked about that again in episode 30 with our read of the book, The Talent Code. And so number 5 is my final takeaway is leverage technology to help you learn what you want to learn and what you're excited about learning. What are some ways you leverage technology in your own life to help you learn something?
Well, yeah, YouTube is huge. It's really powerful. Excuse me. And the Coursera, but again, it's more of those videos online and calculators all the time because numbers are hard.
So massively online, what do they call them? MOOCs. Massively open online courses, MOOCs. I have mixed feelings about those. Sometimes I learn some things in there, but the structure of it bugs me. I don't like the quizzes. The quizzes bother me. Like, you have to get a certain score on a quiz before you can go on to the next thing, and that kills the joy for me. It kills the joy of learning. But I don't know how else would these people, like the instructors, like judge whether or not you're learning what they're trying to impart. I don't know. I haven't really thought that much about it, but there's just the structured learning. I'm more and more I learn about myself. I'm not that kind of guy.
Yeah.
I don't like the structured learning. I like the unstructured learning. I like to explore what I want to explore, how I want to explore it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think there needs to be more of that. And I think there needs to be more freedom in society for people to learn that way and to express what they know in other ways other than degrees and certificates and whatever. Okay. So leverage technology, we're talking about MOOCs, we're talking about, of course, the internet, we're talking about calculators, we're talking about, I just learned this week that Georgia Tech has the entire Masters in Computer Science online for free. And MIT has similar things, and probably Harvard and all these other big universities have so many of these classes and this knowledge that you can go out and get for free. There's it's amazing. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything you can't learn on your own if you learn how to teach yourself. If you have the motivation to teach yourself. So to me, that's really, really exciting. And then, dude, have you heard of ChatGPT?
I have not.
You haven't?
Well, I only have because of you recently, but yeah.
Everybody's buzzing about that. And in fact, I started using it. It is pretty good at, I've used it to help me convert from various languages, coding languages, like from Go into Java, and it's much more efficient than doing an internet search and then trying to find something on Stack Overflow or some of the search engines, and maybe you'll find somebody who's actually posted a blog post on it. What's really fascinating is how search is going to change here in the future, and I think it's not going to be in the format of people who have written up a blog post about how to do something. It's going to be distilled into some model, some computer model, some computer brain, and spit out that way. And so you're going to get that knowledge more directly. What do you call it? Less distilled or more directly, and instead of having to read through a blog post or pull something out of Stack Overflow or something like that. And that's, I think, a really fascinating paradigm shift that I think we're going to see moving forward. Quicker access to that information that you're truly looking for without having to sift through thought processes and stuff like that. It's kind of like getting to knowledge without having to read a research paper.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
And ChatGPT just lays it out for you and explains it to you. It's it's pretty good. Which leads me to another point. It's not bad to be a Luddite either. I think humans can be both. They can leverage technology to do what they need to do faster, better, stronger. But it's also to be a Luddite, and a Luddite, someone who wants to smash the machines and just rely on their own humanity. I think you need that as well, and some stories that kind of help exemplify that that I tell in the blog post is that some coworkers and I were talking about some movie trivia. I forget what we were talking about, and there was some actor's name that we couldn't remember. And our natural instinct was to just do, well, let's just search this guy's name and continue on with our discussion. But then I was like, no, let's make a bet. Let's see who can come up with this actor's name organically first. And so we agreed, and we didn't search for it, but then that killed the conversation, and we were like, wow, come on, let's pop this thing into our head. But so we went away, and then like the next day, it just bubbled like an air bubble popped into my head. Nick Nolte.
Ah, yeah.
Nick Nolte was the actor we were trying to remember, and so I call this the Nick Nolte effect. Have you ever had a thing that you couldn't remember, and you're just like, I'm just going to let my brain percolate on it for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it just pops in your head. That's awesome how that works.
Yeah.
However, it's very slow and inefficient, but at the same time, you're exercising, right? It's an exercise. It's like, come on, man, you gotta work. You gotta work your brain, because if you don't work it, it's not gonna work anymore. It's gonna atrophy. It's like your muscles. You gotta put it to work. You gotta have the discipline to put it to work. And so the Nick Nolte effect for me is a reminder that you gotta have discipline to exercise the noodle. And that's one way to do it, is to not cede absolute control to the machines for what goes on up here. Another perfect example. We were sitting on the couch. We watched the show 1889 on Netflix.
Really good.
Really good, kind of spooky show. And there's a song that the captain's daughter sings. It's a very haunting melody. And very, very pretty. And I heard it. I was like, man, I got to find out what that song is. And so I was searching all around, and I couldn't find it. And finally, somebody mentioned the name of it somewhere in the YouTube somewhere or something. And so I learned the song, and I learned a little bit about the history of it. Die Gedanken sind frei. And it's really a pretty song, and it's got a good meaning, and so I liked it. And so for weeks after watching the show, I would walk around the house humming that song, and it would drive her crazy. And until I forgot it, probably because of her. I probably just pushed it out of my memory because it annoyed her, and so I just let it go. I just let the memory go because of her. But then last week we were like, how does that song go again? I can't. Do you remember the tune? I couldn't remember the tune. And so your instinct was, I'm going to search it up. And I was like, no! Nick Nolte effect! So we didn't search for it. So I'm sleeping on the couch today, and I wake up, and immediately I'm singing that whole tune in my song, or that whole song in my head. It just popped into my head again. Nick Nolte effect. So it's still working. So it's good. I'm still building folds in my brain.
So it's really interesting to watch you learn and the process of how you learn, because that's exactly what we do when we build learning. Exactly what we do. And so I was really impressed with you that you were able to take all this knowledge and decipher it and literally turn it into the key points for all the adult learning principles. And that was really awesome. So I was really proud of you for being able to do that and recognizing yourself. So there's this one woman, Lauren Waldman, and she has a company called the Learning Pirate, and her acronym is YAR. You are really ready. I love her. She was a former chief learning officer, cognitive neuroscience. She's freaking awesome. But she breaks it down into how we build learning into a couple of easy steps. What to learn, the learning map, and then design it for learning in micro learning components. and then measure the learning. And so it was like, yep, he nailed it all. And so, yep, very impressed. You could be a learning professional now. And it was
Can I
interesting.
have an honorary doctorate?
You can. Yes, the Cable Doctorate. We're going to...
Yeah, Cable University.
Cable University.
TX University.
So it was interesting to listen to you and how you processed, because when you talked about the failure rate, the failing is extremely important in how our brains work. Because if we don't have that failure, one, we're not challenged, and two, when we talked about in the talent code, the deep learning piece, that's where the learning actually occurs. So you fail and you're like, shit, why did I fail? And then you went back and then you refocused and tried it again and again until like, oh, no, I got it. When you also talked about motivation, and then, okay, you get this one step and now you get to the next step. Part of that too is our brains have to be challenged. If we're not challenged, we lose motivation. So now, I mean, obviously those last 3 steps, you solved it. Okay, you're good. You don't need to really reinforce them because you solved it. And maybe you still do, but it sounds like your motivation was waning a little bit because I got it done. I've reached my goal.
A little bit. I still want to get those last 2 steps so I don't have to rely on a sticky to get through it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then how we learn overall, in case you guys are curious. So our brain has about 85 billion neurons, which is really freaking cool, I think. And a neuron is a cell that sends messages to the body. So like when you're learning how to write, for example, for something that's a little bit tangible for most people, that neural pathway is built where your brain just immediately, like your neural pathway is built to your fingers where it starts working. So when you were working through the Rubik's Cube, like your fingers learn that neural pathway was built. And then once we do something once, we have a neural pathway, which is really cool. But if we don't keep using it, then it goes away. So those, if you like, I don't know, take a painting class or you travel to Paris and go on the metro once, and it's really cool. The neural pathway is built. You go back to America, never go back to Paris. You're going to forget how to ride the metro in Paris. Makes sense. Or if you're learning a new language, sometimes those grooves are really deep that you're going to forget some of them, but they're going to go away. So if you learned Spanish as a kid, right?
Not really, no.
No, okay.
Just a little bit.
Well, a lot of people like to take languages as a kid, and then they know it really well, but then as adults, they don't use it for 20 years, and suddenly they're in Paris, and the cat likes it. And then you're like trying to remember those words. Shoot, what was the word for bus? And so it's they disappear, but not necessarily all the way if those grooves are really there. So about the practice piece, practice, the more you practice it, the deeper those grooves get. So you build that neural pathway first, and then you practice, and it really gets through. And then the groove is so deep, you will never forget how to do a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
So so for future, for those of you who want to know how your brains work for learning, that's it. Read the blog.
Just one other point. Her dad gave me this article from the Washington Post this week, speaking of ChatGPT, this past week. It's about a Princeton student who's trying to develop some software to help people discern whether or not things being written have been written by a machine or a human. Yeah. And so this is where we're getting to. Like, it's getting so hard to discern who's doing what now, because the machines are getting so good at mimicking human skills and abilities and behaviors. Maybe not necessarily behaviors yet, but yeah. So that's why, just to reiterate the importance of our own human learning and the breadth and depth that we need to continue to focus on is very important moving forward if we're going to have any kind of successful relationship with the technology that we're developing. So
totally.
Anyway, that's any other parting thoughts?
No.
Thanks a lot for listening to this episode of the Dream 10X podcast. This is brought to you by Nautilus Tracker LLC, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Woohoo!
Over now.
Bye.
Dream on.
Dream on.